Bryan Baysinger is a well-known financial educator. For 34 years, Bryan has developed a specialty in working with semi-retired and retired persons. Hundreds have attended his classes learning how to increase their income by as much as 30% and how to reduce their taxes by 50% in some cases. People have reduced or eliminated the tax on their Social Security income. Many have used his advice to set aside millions of dollars in order to grow their assets and pay less income tax. Employees and retirees of major as well as small companies have benefited from his advice on ways to preserve and grow their retirement nest eggs. He is consequently regarded as a local expert who focuses exclusively on the needs of those aged 55 and over and their specific financial problems and opportunities. Bryan travels the country attending conferences, gaining training, knowledge, and experience, keeping his education to those 55 and older fresh, vibrant, and relevant, as well as keeping his audiences adept in all the new changes on the horizon. It also gives him the tools to show semi-retired and retirees how to use unique and creative planning strategies they may have not been aware of. These are all aimed at helping semi-retirees and retirees achieve maximum results for themselves and their families. When not working with semi-retirees and retirees, Bryan shares his time with Lisa, his wife of 33 years in Meridian, Mississippi. They are parents to 3 sons and look forward to spending their weekends and vacations traveling with them and their 2 grandchildren.
Hi, my name is Bryan Baysinger. Welcome to the Retirement Shield this evening. We appreciate you being here. We know you have a very busy schedule, and with everything that's going on in our country right now, people are just running here and there. But tonight, we're thankful that you've taken the time to sit down and look at a very important topic when it comes to pre-retirees and people that retire later on, maybe some years down the line. Well, as I begin this discussion, I want to talk to you about the value of and how valuable it is to ask and get us several opinions, especially when it comes to our health. You know, today we have specialists by the multitudes, but back in the old days, in the 60s, when I was a kid, you just had a general practitioner at your doctor's office normally, a surgeon at the hospital, an anesthetist, and some nurses and some other assistants. But beyond that, for a whole, people really didn't specialize a whole lot back then. Of course, today when it comes to healthcare, there are specialists everywhere in the field of medicine. Where we had a very narrow amount when I was a kid, today we have pain specialists, lung doctors, heart doctors, sports medicine doctors. The list is very long. But back in 2015, I want to share my story with you. I had an issue with my health, and I'd like to share where a second opinion was very beneficial to me. I was having some pain in my left hip. A regular general physician, family doctor, of course, started with cortisone shots, which alleviated the pain only temporarily. So my doctor had used a doctor about 90 miles from where we live in a town called Jackson, and he referred me to the sports medicine doctor that he had utilized. Now, this doctor had had polio from a kid up, so he said, this guy's going to really be helpful to you. So I took the 90-mile trip, went to the doctor. He used an x-ray and a probe to reveal that I needed to have a hip replacement. He did give me a more potent shot that lasted and did bring some better relief than the cortisone shots, but the bottom line was that ultimately I needed a full hip replacement because my hip was worn out and it was rubbing bone to bone, which was causing some tremendous pain. This doctor is amazing. Did an outpatient work on my hip that morning in surgery. I remember him saying, this operation is going to change your life, and you're going to be like a new man almost immediately. I had the surgery. It only took about an hour and a half. Then my wife brought me home that afternoon. And by the next morning, they had home health care out to my home, and I was walking with a new titanium hip that'll never wear out. I was amazed. at how this modern marvel changed my life for the better. And it all came down to me getting a second opinion. And that I not only receive the advice, but I also acted on the advice I was given. The specialist was the sports medicine doctor, of course, and he was right. In a couple of days, I was a new man, better for myself and my family. I share this story tonight to you to show the power and significance of getting specialized knowledge and acting upon that knowledge. Our goal with this workshop tonight is to give you a fresh perspective on how you look at your retirement and how you can take this new information and act upon it for a better outcome for you and your family. So let's get started tonight. First area I want to talk to you about is uncertainties. When we talk about uncertainties in retirement, what are we talking about? Well, uncertainty in retirement, a lot of times, I think would have happened. What would have happened to me if I hadn't taken a sports medicine doctor's advice to move forward and had the surgery. Well, we talk to people all the time who say if they had only known what to do earlier on, if they had only knew there were other options. You go through your life asking the question after the fact, could have, maybe I could have, maybe I should have, maybe I would have. But most people don't know what's available to them, the choices they have out here. You don't know what you don't know, right? Let me ask you, is doubt, fear, speculation, and volatility is what you're supposed to be feeling right now? And if you're before retiring, maybe you're 10 years out, or post-retirement, you've already retired. We're going to go over three major areas that you positively and confidently want to get right in retirement. Since you only retire one time, you worked a lifetime, maybe 20, 30, 40 years of your life savings to retire with confidence and certainty. So those retirement savings are there during your best years yet to come, which has been predicted and proven that people will retire earlier now than they had in past generations. And they're also living longer. Some retirees will live in retirement 30, 35 years, about the same amount of time that they work. There shouldn't be any reason of worrying, will my retirement last as long as I do? And if I'm married for my spouse as well. Abe Lemon says the trouble with retirement is you never get a day off. And isn't that true when you're retired? Or let's say, for instance, during the weekend when you're off from work, you're spending money, you're doing things you normally wouldn't do. But let's talk tonight about the three layers of the three areas of retirement. And the first one I've already alluded to and give you some information, and that's navigating through uncertainty, the what if and what now of retirement. Number two, let's talk about income. Why is that so important today that we know what our income is and how for it to last the rest of our life? Because let's face it, as I said earlier, you're on vacation every day. So you got to find a way when it comes to income on how to make that last. And finally, probably the biggest problem that we have that can tear down what we work so hard to build, that's taxes and the true impact that taxes has on your money. Now, we believe that this information applies if you're considering retirement now or in the next 10, 15 years. And that most people that we talk to that are nearing retirement, their outlook and perspective is somewhat conservative, and also you don't want to go through another roller coaster ride when it comes to your retirement money, because that's money you got to have for the rest of your life. and you don't want to see any life change during your retirement. Now, the reason all these areas is important is the people that we work with want to be able to travel. They want to be able to go fishing. They want to be able to go hunting, pursue their hobbies, maybe golf, maybe seeing the sights, traveling. As I mentioned a moment ago, all these areas are important for retirees. Now, let's talk about at first navigating through uncertainty. And we know today that we're dealing with, first off, a pandemic in our nation. We've got a pandemic that's been unlike any other things that America's ever been faced with, that we've dealt with since the first of the year. And so there's a lot of crazy headlines out there. There's a lot of things every time you cut the news on TV or your computer or your iPad or your iPhone or whatever medium you utilize. There's a lot of things that's going on. There's rioting, pillaging, people getting hurt, people getting in the middle of an illegal act and getting shot, and all these things that's happening in our country tends to make us somewhat fearful. And of course, fear is a lot of times unwarranted, but at the same time, we need to realize that in amongst this uncertainty, not only does it affect us from a physical or a standpoint of what we view in these medium sources, but it also affects us from a financial standpoint. Where's the market been when it comes to this up and down? You know, when you got uncertainty as much as we have, the market is certainly like a roller coaster at that particular time. And throughout history, we found it to be. And especially when we're now trying to finish up and find out what the results of the presidential election is. Now, when we talk about the stock market and other areas of our finances, what's your take on this? Are you the type of person that's reactive? In other words, you just take the risk, everything will work out based on the information that you have right now. So if you're reactive, you go through these problems, and then a lot of times that can stem anger, frustration, everything, and we get upset after something's already happened. Now, on the other side of the coin, we have the proactive choice, and proactive just simply means that I'm not going to wait till after things happen. I'm going to take an approach that puts me in a planning situation where I plan that whatever goes sideways, whether the market, taxes, whatever, is that we plan for it. We know the market goes up and down. It's done that for the entirety of the history of the market. How do we get out ahead of some of these problems that we face, especially with semi-retired and retired people? If we're proactive, we can put a plan in place for that. And I'm say, for instance, you're going to need $5,000 a month. Well, that just is not going to happen magically, but it can happen if you get out in front of it and you're proactive. So we consistently move ahead to figure out what we need and how we need. And we live in a constantly changing world, and we either make those changes ahead of time and be prepared, or get caught off guard and get taken advantage of when it comes to the market, our finances, and retirement. Keeping those three things in order there. The uncertainty of retirement, taxes, and of course income. Let's take a moment and take a look at a history of the market. You know, the market back in 1929, we know what happened. The market crashed, and many people committed suicide at that time, lost everything they had. We thought it pretty interesting that this same market that we're seeing it happened in 1929 also has a way of repeating itself. There's there's a statement that says that history has a tendency to repeat itself, or all things, there's things that change, but then there's things that go up and down like the market. So you can see Black Tuesday in 1929, and then the Great Depression kicks in. And what about March of 2020 with a lot of money in the market? And then it rallies back. People always talk about what do Americans learn from history, and unfortunately, we don't learn a whole lot. We just kind of stay on the roller coaster and just hope everything's going to work out. And we know that obviously that's why we have the retirement shield, so that we can avoid being taken advantage of and being a victim of what happens, and we can be a victor if we get out ahead of what's going on. Now let's talk about the history of the market, because there's a lot of misnomers out there. There's a lot of big bank talk, and a lot of promises, and there's a lot of under delivery. When you look at the history of the market, if you look at the history of the market, what it's really done, what are you trying to assess out of that? Let me just put it that way. I've heard through the years, the market averages about 10%. Well, we took a 13-year average rate of return. And when I say average rate of return, we're talking about the real rate of return that you've earned on your money, ROR. Instead of, oh, wow, market, I'm up 40% this year, or I'm down 20. Well, if you notice in this graph here, in 2000, the market, after in the early 2000s, after around 2003 there, we see the market going down 50%. So now let's think about this for a minute. If you had $100,000 and you had it in the market and went down 50%, and you're down to $50,000, right? Now, how much would it take for the market to come back to even? A lot of people say 50%. Actually, since you're down to 50,000, it would take another $50,000 or 100% return for that to happen. And so during this year and during this period from 2000 to 2013, if you started with $100,000, my question to you tonight is, how much did you end up with after 13 years? You started with 100, and we took this real rate of return and found out over that 13-year period about 3.96, not the 8, not the 10, not the big bank talk and other talk that you hear all the time happening. Now, I want to talk to you about a famous ship for a moment. What's the name of this ship? Now, most people, you can read it right there on the screen. This particular ship was sailing from London to New York and set out to break records and get from London to New York in a significant small time frame. And so we know the name of the ship is, of course, the Titanic. And the Titanic had some fatal flaws. One of the things I believe that happened that should have never been said, that it was so strong in its structure with the steel that was made, the hardest steel at that time, and that it was a Titan. So being the Titanic, it was deemed as the unsinkable ship. So, but we know through history that's not the case. This ship sunk because it hit ice further out in the ocean, although there was many warnings to the captain, to the crew, and they just took for granted the fact that the ship had these flaws in it, and they were warned about the ice, but did they take advantage of that? No, they didn't take advantage of the advice they was given, so they took a risk, and it was the biggest risk and probably one of the biggest disasters in ship making in naval history, because the Titanic, with all of its good points and all of the things that was promised, it had one fatal flaw: was not enough lifeboats on board. So the reason that day over 2,000 people lost their lives, there weren't enough lifeboats for people to get on board. Now let me ask you, how can that be relative to the stock market? Now, can your retirement take on another market correction? And I want to tell you this story. Many years ago, I say many years ago, it's just been a few years ago, I was in Tampa, Florida, actually working with some retirees. I had done some workshops down in that area to Steak and Ale, and was using some office space, real nice office space in that area, and working with retirees, as I've done for all these years. And a friend of mine, Dwayne, wanted to go to Busch Gardens, which was a big theme park there in Tampa. And so one day we had a day off, and we took off to Busch Gardens, and we got on several rides. Now there's one particular ride I'd like to call attention to, and that was, it wasn't a roller coaster, but it was a big boat. And this boat, the gentleman, when I went to the platform to get on board, he said, "Get in the very back." And so I did that. And of course, the boat took off and it swayed back and forth. And my friend Dwayne, that was with me, is a New Hampshire guy, and that strong New Hampshire dialect. He said, he looked over at me and he said, "Bryan, are you about to lose your cookies, man?" And he was right. I was almost sick by the time I got off of that ride. Now, let me ask you a question tonight. How do you feel when it comes to your retirement going down? Now, the ascent on the market, when it goes up, we love that part of it, but it's the mad dash down that's really the killer and can kill retirement savings. You know, we had the .com bubble and the '08 problem where everybody lost most of their 401ks. And is that something you want to position what you've worked a lifetime to accumulate, and that is retirement dollars? Should they be on this roller coaster? I mean, does it make you ask yourself the question, does it make you sick when you see the downturn? All of us love the upside of it, but when it comes to when that bear kicks in, and it oftentimes does every 3 to 4 years, you have a bear market that kicks in now. So does your retirement need to be positioned for a fall, or are you wanting to protect the retirement and bring some, instead of the roller coaster ride, bring some stability? I reminded of a cartoon that I saw that these people are on the roller coaster, and they're going down like you see in this picture here, and they're saying, and it's referencing their retirement dollars, and it says, "We never expected retirement to be this way." And so they were probably on a course of being sick like I was on that day. So if you're sick of losing and want stability, let's get together and put a plan together to avoid that problem, okay? Now, let's talk now about income. How important is income? You work a lifetime, you set money aside, and all so that you can have an enhanced income. Now, I met with a couple not too long ago, a couple of my clients, and they had actually planned very well on their income side, making between $7,000 and $8,000 a month. You look at their portfolio, not a tremendous amount of assets. It's a good amount of assets, but more than anything, they now have something they can depend on every month. And when it comes to income, when you're retired, most people want to at least make as much as they were while they were working, or if they've reduced expenses when they're retired, then they want to make a significant amount every month and know that that is going to be there every month. Now, what are some challenges to that? It used to be in the old days, it was called the three-legged stool. And back in the old days, you had pensions. Now, we know people that have pensions, and now, back in the 80s, pensions were taken away because I don't believe it was fair. But what did the companies do? They promised your grandparents or your parents, hey, you worked for us 30, 40 years, 45 years, like some of my relatives have, at one job at the same place, and they were promised this nice pension. When you retire, our plans for you is to have making about as much as you did while you was working. That was wonderful. But the sad part about it was these corporations found a way around that, and they took away pensions. So today, while we have Social Security's there and our personal savings is there, a lot of times that other leg is missing. So how does that affect us in our income? It can affect us drastically. There are a few pensions, by the way, left in America that people are retiring with, and I encourage you, if you work for that employer, that you take full advantage of that to make sure that third leg's there. But if you're like a lot of folks that we talk to, semi-retired and retired now, they're dependent on their Social Security check and what they've saved in their 401k, CDs, money markets, and other savings. So, what have you put a plan in place to protect your income resources? That's the big question tonight. What have you done there? Like on the picture we see here, pensions and retirements. It's fragile like the eggs that you see in the picture here. They say picture paints 1,000 words. So protecting your pension, your retirement, and making sure it's going to be there every month. We found out through the years that takes planning. If you want 5,000 or 10,000 a month in retirement, whatever retirement needs are there, have a plan in place to make that happen. Don't just happenstancely hope for the best. Plan. Our goal with Retirement Shield is that we work for you and with you on making sure those income resources are there. Income just doesn't have to just disappear. This is what we talk about all the time, and we encourage you to make a plan and put a plan in place. There's a saying that's been around for a lot of years that says people don't plan to fail, they just fail to plan. So let's put a plan in place, meet with you, talk with you, and look at putting a plan in place to protect those income resources. Now, we need to shift our mindset in retirements today, and when it comes to our retirement dollars. One of the things that we discuss with our clients is on a regular basis is shifting your mindset. Now, I know that's hard to do when maybe you've had the same thought process for many years. But it's very similar to scaling up a mountain. When you look at this picture here, the guy's got on the gear. He's geared up. He's got the right kind of shoes. He's got the right kind of pants, clothing, gloves, the hat, the toboggan. He's got on his coat, and he's ready to scale that mountain. I've watched a lot of these biographies on scaling Mount Everest. And so you work all this time, 20, 30, 40 or more years climbing the mountain. You start up the mountain. You want to have the best equipment and be prepped for the journey up. But what's interesting about climbing the mountain, oh gosh, when these guys get to the summit of Mount Everest, what elation and excitement and everything that they have. It's kind of like going up the market that we were talking about earlier. But here's the challenge for climbers. Do you know statistics say that there are more deaths coming down the mountain than it is going up? And when it comes to your savings and your retirement, you may have saved and accumulated the right money, but coming down that mountain too fast can lead to death in your retirement, and we don't want to see that happen. They say a climber will be climbing down the mountain, get tired, take a break, and never get back up and die right there. See, coming down that mountain too fast is like losing too much money in the market. Maybe spending too much money or unseen events, taxes going up 20% or more, and losing $1,000 out of $5,000 a month. There are things that we have to do to start thinking about shifting our mindset that it's different while we were still working and income was coming in. Now, taking on that mindset, hey, I'm in a different category now. I got to hold on to what I've worked a lifetime to accumulate. Now, let's talk about sequence of returns. And I alluded to this earlier when we showed the graph about the Great Depression. And here's the thing. Really, I'm saying one more time that sequence of returns matters. What you start with, we see same people starting with $500,000, $500,000 during retirement, and you see on the left side of the screen, you see the green column and how that these sequences have gone up. So, and then on the right side, we see a constant downturn. And what the difference is, when people think of the yield on their assets, they may only think of average rate of return, but it's the order of the returns. And here's the two examples. On the left is looking at a married couple, 65 years of age, starting with $500,000, like I said, taking out $25,000 a year. But you can see in this example, they start out with some pretty positive years, and at the end, they get some negativity, but they still end up in the end with the ups and the downs of about $477,000. All they did was flip these returns. Each account averaged about 4.8, but starting out in holes leaves you with about $20,000 at the end. So when you see this amount of money being taken out, the same amount of money, and these major downturns, you see at the end, the couple at the right, after all these years from 65 to 83, one side, they have $477,147, and the other side, $20,000. So when you reach age 83, is that a point where you want to have lost, $380,000+? Obviously, most clients would want the column to be on the left. But see, here's the problem with that. Timing the markets are almost incredibly impossible, unless you're a day trader or you're trading and then you're buying stock and then you're selling it off you buy it at a discount, you buy it when it's really low, and you sell when it goes up. Those are the only kind of people I've ever seen that can really determine and make best situations when it comes to the market. Now, obviously, if we plan correctly, we can end up with the people like in the green column here, and that's what we all want, right? A plan for income distribution. Now, that's making sure that income is coming every month, regardless of what happens. So, as we see here, another area that we're going to talk about is, of course, Social Security. That's one of the retirement legs, right? We found a lot of people time Social Security wrong. 96% of Americans on Social Security do it at the wrong time. They start taking it at the wrong time. And why is that a problem? Well, there's some propaganda going on saying we don't know that Social Security is going to be around. Or so many people, what they'll do is they'll start at 62, and that's taking Social Security as quickly as you can and as soon as you can. And for some people, that's a good idea. But for others, waiting till full retirement age gives you I just met with a client just the other day, one of my clients, and she had the privilege of waiting until full retirement age. Now, here, why would she wait till full retirement age when she could start taking it at 62? When you start adding the numbers up, you get a lot more money at full retirement age. Now, this lady had saved and set money aside, and guess what? She didn't need to take her money at age 62. So she waited to age 66 in her column to take her money out at full retirement age, and you get the one of the best benefits. So if you look at this chart here, it shows you from 43 to 54, 55, 56, whatever date of birth column you fall into, about 66 years of age, or around up to age between 66 and 67, is a great time to start utilizing that retirement, because you get the maximum or a portion of the maximum. I'm going to talk a minute about how you can go beyond full retirement age when you really get the maximum. So some people do start collecting before retirement, as I mentioned. Now, if you start before retirement, there's a 30% reduction in those retirement savings. Well, I'm afraid it's not going to be there. Well, you might want to look at overcoming and conquering that fear. If you got enough money, as I mentioned earlier, then you can utilize the filing strategy and save that 30%. So if we start collecting retirement at full retirement age, look at the difference here. You can receive 100% of your full Social Security earned. And then also we got another filing strategy, which is filing strategy number 3, and that's start collecting after full retirement. For every year that you wait till up till age 70, you get an 8% increase, or altogether 32%. And if you've got the money saved and you got the resources there and you don't need that, it might be a good idea to sit down with us and get a Social Security plan. That's a kind of a bonus. I was talking about taxes. I was talking about income. I was talking about the markets, but also getting Social Security right will be a plan, because today people are living longer than ever. Longevity. Kirk Douglas, the famous actor, just died the other day at 103. And I used to watch a program on TV with Willard Scott called, I think it was Good Morning. It may have been Good Morning America. I forgot the title but he would say every morning he would come up with, yes, Mary Jones in Toledo, Ohio is now 104 today. So people are living longer than ever. Now, you may not become a centenarian, but you could live way up into your 90s. In fact, I got a mother-in-law right now. It's age 93. Just had a client passed away at almost 94. He still got a wife at 94, still living. And there's spousal benefits we need to consider. If you're taken out of the picture, how do you want your spouse positioned? Well, if you plan that correctly, you can make sure your spouse gets exactly what he or she needs. And then, of course, we realize that some in other areas, there's a lot of people that want to continue to work. I had a friend that I worked with for a lot of years, and he went home at, believe it or not, at age 85 and started pacing the floors and went back to work because he just didn't want to retire. So let's look now at the impacts that taxes can have on us. Now, when we look at taxes, I know most of us have probably a CPA or tax person that we work with. But what is the real impact that taxes has on us? It's been said that taxes is an 800-pound gorilla sitting in the room. And when it comes to your retirement savings, it is to your benefit to take advantage of every tax opportunity that's out there. In fact, there's a guy named Ed Slott, founder of www.irahelp.com, if you want to click on that, who's probably the top most notarized, with the most notoriety. And he says that if taxes go up to say 50%, which is historically very likely, that leaves you on only half of your life savings. So can you imagine that? It going up to 50%, are you losing half of your money? Now, with the pandemic, with all of the stimulus money that's went out, we know that Americans will have to pay for that stimulus. It wasn't a free ride, guys. I mean, we get all these monies. It's great to get them during this pandemic when people have lost their jobs, but somebody's got to pay for that. So Ed Slott saying that it could go up as high as 50%. What is also interesting is there's a guy named David M. Walker who used to be the Comptroller General of the U.S. of the Government Accounting Office, or GAO. In other words, he was the head CPA for the federal government from 1998 to 2009. And he also, along with Ed Slott, predicts that we will have at least a minimum of 50% it going up. And that the nation, with a big impact of taxes that way, we could go bankrupt. So here's our nation's number one auditor from 98 to 2009. It's also saying that we could go up, it could actually anywhere from 50 to 80%. Now, as of 2016, 66 cents of every tax dollar goes to pay for four things. Now, it's kind of interesting when we talk about taxes. I want to kind of stop for a moment. Have you ever sat down and put the IRS together? That means theirs. So we don't want to pay 1 cent more than what we're legally due to pay. But I thought it was interesting when you put together theirs. So if you don't plan appropriately, you get caught with a reactive situation. But if you plan appropriately, then you're positioning yourself to make what we call tax-wise planning, doing it tax-wise. So 66 cents of every dollar goes to pay for four things, and those four things is Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and national debt. So when you get to adding that up, that's a lot of money that goes out every year just to take care of those things. And as we know, Social Security, they've borrowed against it many years and taken money out, and actually even funded the Vietnam War when it comes to Social Security. And then we got Medicaid, people on Medicaid, Medicare, and the national debt. So all of these things add up. Now, that leaves us 8 cents out of every dollar. And then that's to fund over $200 trillion in liabilities that they promised to the American people. No one ever runs for government and says, hey, let's cause your taxes to go up. They always say they're going to cut back on taxes. But regardless of who goes in this presidential election, we know at some point, regardless of who they are, there will be a cost for all this stimulus and everything that we're left to pay for, especially when you talk about only 8 cents is left. Look at all of the places that we fund the rest of our government. Now, let's talk about debt versus income, U.S. national debt. And you can go out to usdebtclock.org, and it's a ticking time bomb when it comes to debt that we have in our country. Nationally, as we put this together, it's went up. I'm certain, as it continues to go up, over 26 trillion, 554 billion, 169 million and $24. So you see, that's a tremendous amount. That's $80,000 per citizen. U.S. Federal Tax Reserve. It's on and on and on what taxes and the impact they will have. What do you think will happen? I believe they won't have a chance but to go up on taxes. Now, that means you position yourself to pay the least amount of taxes. Now, we talked to people through the years that they work with a CPA, and CPA does a good job of making preparation for you and your taxes. Now, if you've sat down with a tax professional, deductions, exemptions, exclusions, and credits is what they normally call on, and recognize that you need to take advantage of. That way that lowers or eliminates your taxes. Pretty interesting. I've done some research and found out that some of the wealthy people back in the day, can you believe that taxes was as high and back in history as 94% for wealthy Americans? It's that old saying that the people with the most take care of the people with the least. So that's what's happened in our country today. No offense to be given there, but somebody has to pay, and taxes will happen regardless. Now, what are we going to do to protect ourselves? Of course, all the things I just mentioned with with your accountant, and then on the other side, what kind of a tax plan can we put in place to eliminate some of these problems and position you to be doing everything tax-wise? Now, we bring up the question, is a Roth conversion appropriate for you? If you take a look at this graph here, now Senator Roth is the one that created the Roth conversion. And let me say this about a Roth conversion. We've seen some people that committed what we call tax suicide, who went out and converted, especially retired people in a poll that we took, and they went out and converted everything over immediately to a Roth so their children wouldn't have to pay the taxes. The challenge with that is, though, that when you do that, you could lose 50% or more of what you've accumulated. So if you have, let's say in this case, $2.8 million, do you want to end up with just 1.4? Do you want to lose half of that? Obviously not. But I'll tell you a story. I had a client that had planned for his family. He was a client of mine for a long time. Lived out in the country, and he had his retirement savings that I was helping him take care of, that he had moved out of his 401k, and we were helping him with an IRA. In that situation, a standard IRA. The problem came up is when he died. Now his wishes were that his children and grandchildren, he had one child and 4 grandchildren, was for them to take that $50,000, it was $250,000 total, which worked out to $50,000 for each person, if they took it tax-wise and they allowed it to continue to accumulate. And that was back during when we could do what's known as the stretch IRA. With the new CARES Act that's come about, that's been lost for newer people. But the big mistake they made was, of course, the brother was in charge of the will, and the will said that the gentleman wanted these people to take their money and continue to make it deferred and stretch it out. It's called the stretch or the stretch IRA, also known as, the multi-generational IRA. And they certainly had that privilege to do this because it was back during that time. And that was the desire of the person for them to take it out tax-wise. Imagine this: if you're in your 20s or 30s and your grandfather dies, and you got $50,000, and it sits and accumulates as a minimum, well, let's say 4 to 6%. You could look at doubling that over a 20, 30-year period, maybe even more. That 50,000 turn out to be, when you retire, $150,000. So that was the plans for this man. But what happened was, the people decided they wanted all their money right now instead of taking advantage of the stretch or multi-generational IRA. They said, pay us now. Of course, we set out warnings to them, how you going to lose this? So guess what? The person left this money. The 5 children, it was 4 grandchildren and 1 grandchild, ended up with only $21,000 apiece out of what grandfather had and dad had left for the child, 1 child, and 4 grandchildren. And was that smart? I think not. So when we talk about a Roth conversion or converting monies out, certainly we want to move monies out of the tax deferred, or what we call tax delayed column, and move them into tax free. But this conversion takes place over a period of time. It's not where you go out like they did and took all their money at one time and lose from $50,000 to $21,000, which is about a 60% or better loss that was done and handled wrong. I tried to help the people, but they had made their mind up. They wanted their money, and so they lost. It's kind of like that funny commercial on that you see on TV with one of the companies that says, "I need my money and I want my money now." But there's a price when you want your money immediately when it comes to tax deferred or tax sheltered qualified plans. But if you do a Roth conversion and move money over at a gradual pace, then you could look at leaving a substantial amount for you and your family if it's done correctly. And so we believe you need a plan for retirement. I can't tell you how many people we sit down with, and the big question that we ask them, how much of your life savings you've accumulated over 25, 30, 40 years or more can you afford to lose? And just about 90 to 95% of them always say, I can't afford to lose 1 penny of what I've worked a lifetime, especially during my retirement. I can't afford to lose any of it. And so if that's your philosophy too, we can help you and put in place a plan to show you how to protect that. And why is that significant? Well, when you retire, every day's like a holiday. Every day's like the weekend. Every day is maybe spending more time, as you see in the picture, with grandchildren. I got 2 grandchildren now, and I actually got 3, one on the way in just a matter of days of this video. A new Baysinger coming into the world. So we're excited to celebrate our 3rd grandchild. And as you can see in this picture, these people are excited about spending children with their grandchildren, great-grandchildren, whoever they may be. But if you put a plan in place to protect what matters to you, you can do all these things. Spend as much time as you want to with grandkids. Maybe you want to take a trip, fly and go to Paris or London, or like we did a few years ago, go to Jerusalem, and maybe go to Venice, Italy, or someplace, an international destination. It takes money to do that, of course. And if you plan appropriately, we believe you can travel as much as you want to, see your grandkids as much as you want to, spend time with friends, neighbors, relatives, associates. And also, if you've got some big buying opportunities, hey, I want to buy a new car. Well, it's just an easy 3-step process to building your personal retirement shield. Step 1, step 2, step 3. We want to help you create a personal retirement plan. This is not a cookie cutter approach. We believe that each person has different needs, wants, desires, and that we work with you to help you accomplish those needs, wants, and desires. And so here we go. We identify the layers of your retirement that need to be reviewed: your income, taxes, downside protection, and other layers to consider. I mentioned Social Security. Not a big topic for tonight, but if you hadn't done any Social Security planning, we can help you in that area. And what about long-term care or giving your money to for a legacy charity? We sit down with a lot of people that want to leave a certain amount to their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, or they say to us, hey, simply, I'm going to spend what I want to spend, enjoy what I want to enjoy. In fact, I met with a client not too long ago, had a great idea that he had bought a substantial amount of life insurance, and he said, I'm spending all of my dollars, and when I die, my children can get my life insurance payment, which I thought was great planning, especially if you wanted to spend everything. So we sit down with a lot of people that are not really interested in leaving a certain amount to their children or grandchildren or to a church or a charity or some type of legacy. They're spending every dime they can, enjoying it, and they say, hey, if anything's left, we're going to leave it to them. But on the other side of the coin, I have people that also say, I would have loved to leave my children, grandchildren, a certain amount of money so that they're cared for and that I'm leaving a legacy for them. So what we do here with the Retirement Shield process is we put in place a plan, a custom-built Retirement Shield plan, and it's no cost to you. We don't charge for advice and a visit. We put together a plan for you, and it's designated for you, not what somebody else wants or needs, but what do you want for your life and for your retirement. So as we're coming to a close to this webinar this evening, now it's time for you to take a proactive decision for a free no-cost visit. There's a saying that says knowledge is power, and that is certainly true. Yet knowledge is only potential power until you utilize it. And like I did with my story about my hip replacement, I not only recognized I needed a hip replacement, I took action, and it changed my life. We're encouraging you to take action and book a visit with us over the next couple of weeks at no cost to you and no obligation. We take this one step at a time. We visit with you, then decide if we need to take it further. It's up to you. Thank you tonight for attending. We look forward to speaking with you in the future. Thank you.